commercial real estate has always historically been behind, when it comes to tech. We're not exactly known for being cutting edge,
Right.
and even like against residential, like we're always light years behind. And so it's the very like good old boys club, a lot of, dinosaurs, frankly, that are just slow to change. And we just felt that there was real opportunity for, kind of disturbance and upset. And we thought that AI was going to move probably much faster than most people realize and was going to sneak up on a lot of our industry, because as you well know, right, you take 6 months off of keeping up with AI and you're like an eternity behind, right? I mean, it just moves so fast.
Quick favor before we jump in. It always surprised me that a large percentage of people who listen to the show regularly haven't yet subscribed. If you're a commercial real estate operator, investor, or builder who values conversations like this around deals, capital, and technology, please take 2 seconds and hit subscribe. It's a simple, free way to support the show. My commitment to you is that my team and I will continue bringing you higher level operators, stronger conversations, and real execution level insights every single week. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Welcome back to the AI Edge podcast, where we talk with operators, investors, and founders building what's next in commercial real estate and how AI and systems are changing the game. Today, I'm joined by Matt Hagar, co-founder and managing partner of AI CRE Partners. Matt has over 15 years in commercial brokerage. He has been a top producer in Northern California, helped scale a regional brokerage to multiple offices, and now leads a team of brokers building a new platform for how deals get done. Matt, welcome to the AI Edge.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Let's start off with your Pat math. So you described your career in one word as winding. Love that. Walk me through the winding version and where the key pivots have shaped how you think today.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm sure everyone's career has some degree of winding to it, but I feel when I say that, I feel that mine might be just a little more kind of unique than maybe a lot of people. And early on, to be honest, that was probably more of a struggle and an impediment. But, after time, when I kind of figured it out and realized what it was, I think it's more of a strength and a kind of a unique differentiator at this point that I really kind of lean on, and so yeah, I mean, the short version of that, I mean, I started in residential right out of college. I didn't know anything. I didn't know any better, and hit my head against the wall for a short amount of time there. Just a couple of years, and I wasn't doing well. I couldn't figure out why, and it just I wasn't wired that way, and I didn't get it. And it's a very different type of client and transaction, and so too emotional, and I'm more logic and numbers based, and figured it out and switched over to the commercial side. And I, had a mentor that, promised me, the moon and the stars. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, and didn't quite shake out to be that, and I probably got used more than was mentored, to be honest. And so, after, 5 years or so, maybe in my career, I was doing okay, but not great, not really where I kind of just felt in my heart I could be. And so, you know, um, kind of just did a hard reset and almost left the industry actually, and ended up kind of sticking with it. Everything's meant to be, I guess. I believe that. I know a lot of people believe that, and fate, if you will. But I tried to leave, and I submitted dozens of job applications for quote unquote real job, and didn't get a single phone call or interview or anything. And so, kind of a dark time there, and I ended up, going, kind of into a depression for a few months there, and just kind of wasn't working right. And when I came out of that, I just realized that I still really love real estate. I was really passionate about it, and it's where I wanted to be. But I had to press reset and do something different. And at that point was really the turning point, and where I took kind of full accountability of my career, and couldn't lean on a mentor or anyone else to do anything. If I was going to succeed, it was going to be on me. And so I went on a very massive kind of educational campaign, if you will. And I just started absorbing everything about commercial real estate I could, and reading books and going to lunch with people, anyone I could find. I started taking CCIM classes and, building my financial skill sets and, on and on and on. And so that kind of started to slowly turn. And, then I was recognized by CCIM as one of 10 rising stars in the world in the commercial real estate industry. And so, that got me on their website and in their magazine. And, things really started to kind of start to go faster and faster from that point. And, I ran some small brokerages. I've ran teams. I've owned franchises. I've done property management. So that's what I kind of mean by very winding. And so I really have a passion to just grow and continue to improve my skill set. Like I said, I got my CCIM. Later on, I went back and got a master's degree in real estate from the University of San Diego, just to further that knowledge and on and on. And so I didn't go the traditional kind of route, right? A lot of people, join up. They join one of the big firms, right? One of the publicly traded brokerages. They get the very kind of classical brokerage training, jump in and make a zillion phone calls until you kind of figure it out, And so I never went that route. And I kind of was pretty isolated, frankly. Never worked for any big company like that and never really had, senior agents that were crushing it around me to look up to and model. And so what you see is a very, again, winding or unique path, to get to where I am. And so back in the day, that was an issue. But like I said, now because of my experience and my unique background, I think I really bring a very different set of eyes to the industry and a very different kind of approach and philosophy. And, it's very, counter to the like, this is how we've always done it kind of club, like the conventional wisdom. So I love to upset the apple cart a little bit. I love to do things different. I love to do things new, unique, the kind of, oh, what's going on over there, kind of thing. And so it's kind of, it's become my calling card. It's kind of fun, frankly. And it's just, and now it's become a legitimate competitive advantage, And so again, now I kind of like hang, hang everything on it. Right. And it was tough at the time, but, now, it's got me here and I wouldn't change a thing.
Awesome. What did brokerage teach you early on that still drives your edge now?
I mean, one thing that you can't, no matter what you do, where you come from, or, if you're going to have any level of success, it's the work ethic and it's the consistency more than anything, right? I mean, brokerage and, it's not like that's exclusive to brokerage, but brokerage is all about consistency. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to make good money. You're going to not make money. You're going to, get screwed over. It's just kind of part of the game. And you kind of just got to get up and put your shoes on the same way every day and get to your desk, get to your office, and you got to do those steps, do those tasks, moves the needle. And you kind of have to like somewhat disconnect yourself from the results, almost just like believe that you're doing the right things and the results will take care of themselves. I feel like cold calling and things like that are hugely in that vein. Not every call you make is going to be a good one, but that can't prevent you from picking up the phone the next time. So now where I'm at, I mean, doing different things in my career and now, leading a team and more so than just focusing on personal transactions and stuff. But again, the premise is still the same. You get up, you remember, why you're doing what you're doing every day. You remember what needs to happen, and you do the work and you believe that you're heading in the right direction and the future will take care of itself if you do what needs to be done in the present.
You've been a agent, a leader, and now a platform builder. What changed in your mindset as you moved from producer to builder?
I mean, I think you need to take a more 30,000 foot view. You need to take a wider approach and you need to really you need to make it more about other people. And brokerage can, I think, inherently sometimes be a selfish mentality, right? Like you're chasing deals and, if you win a deal, someone else is losing a deal and vice versa, and it's very me, and, you're out there trying to make a living. Right. And so it can, it can cause a lot of issues like that. And when you're running a team though, it's not about you. It's got to be about the team and it's got to be about their growth and their development and, making them better, building their skill sets, building their ability to, make an income for them and their own families and stuff. And so I think that was probably a shift because early on, when you don't have deals in your career and you're young, it's like, it's very, you gravitate, you want to grab on to any deal you can find, right? Like I need a check, shit, I need a check, or whatever, right? And when it's, you're older and you progress and it's, the deals come with, I guess, a higher degree of confidence, right? Like I say a lot, like I never know where my next deal is going to come from per se, but I know it's around the corner. I know it's coming, right? Where earlier in my career, I did not have that belief. It was very, I guess, high anxiety, right? Like, God, I hope I can make a living tomorrow, right? I hope I'm going to put food on the table, right? And now it's different. And so that anxiety, I think, maybe speaking for myself, I'm sure others maybe can resonate, but again, the selfish kind of mentality to like, I have to provide for my family, right? And so I feel much more confident that that's going to happen no matter what these days. And so now it's more to the team, to the people. How can I instill what I've learned and the successes that I've had, and put that into my people, and I genuinely enjoy that now, and it's very fulfilling, and I love taking the knowledge and things that I've learned and instilling it in my team, and teaching them, and training and whatever that is that they need, and watching their skills kind of develop right before my eyes. It's great to witness.
What did you have to unlearn in order to become a builder?
Unlearn. I mean, I I, I don't know, I don't know if unlearn is the right word per se. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I would just say more it's just like the progression, right? The natural progression of evolving as a person, going from, a young adult, an early 20 something, just kind of, hustling and trying to make a living to, now I'm, almost 40 and married and, young kids, and right, like I'm a very different person than I was. And part of that is the evolution and just the human transformation, right? And so I think it's just the growth, right? And I think you naturally, some things, hopefully like things that should have a bigger presence are growing in your life, and some of those not so great tendencies, like maybe like the selfishness I just mentioned, those are kind of shrinking over time. And it's part of that, like waking up every day and kind of trying to get better mentality. And it's a slow process. Over time it can be a remarkable, difference and improvement.
Matt, most people outside the industry think brokerage is just deal making. Operators know it's systems. From your seat, what are the biggest inefficiencies inside of a traditional brokerage that most people don't see?
Yeah, I mean, brokerage is deal making. Sure, it's of course it's deal making, but it's definitely a lot more than that. And you can one off make deals, right? And you can just kind of do a deal here and do a deal there, but you're going to be very limited to your, inefficiencies and stuff. The way that I really try to teach and train people is you need to think of yourself as a business, right? You are the CEO of, Me Incorporated, and all of our agents, right? They're 1099, they're independent contractors, they're not employees, right? We don't, give them a salary, tell them what to do, right? We are, we're almost like it's almost like a franchise relationship, like a franchisee, franchisor, where we provide the branding and the structure and the ecosystem, but they have their own kind of individual, acre branded business that they run on our platform. And so it's, I feel like there's a lot of similarities there. And so we really try to get them to think that way. And, businesses, have marketing departments and HR departments and finance departments and all this stuff, right? And that's the stuff that gets neglected because in our business, all the work that we do is categorized in two things, which is working on the business and working in the business. And so a lot of people don't know that or lose sight of it. And that's where we try to, that's where it happens. Like what you're talking about, the doing deals and chasing transactions, that's working in the business, right? Like directly activities towards closing deals. That's, making cold calls, negotiating, contracts. That's working in the business. Working on the business is what, 90% of brokers completely fail at. And that's all the things that are behind the scenes of running the business and running your brokerage that aren't necessarily directly related to a deal, like the marketing and your presence. And maybe you're, doing email blasts, or maybe you're, paying for advertising, or, doing budgeting, right? How much are you going to spend this year, right? And like, where's your growth going to come from? Like, all of those things that are important, but, doing XYZ activity doesn't directly get me a commission check, right? And so people lose focus on that. And so I think that all of that other stuff is really what's important to that growth and running it off of a platform, because even though you're doing deals and the deals make the money, I mean, the process of doing deals is a business. And some people just think that it's just chase a deal, close it, chase a deal, rinse, repeat. And the problem with that is you can only scale that so far, because the more deals that you get, the more that you do, you're going to be greatly hampered by your infrastructure, and you're going to show cracks, and you just can only do a certain amount. And so, say maybe you can do, I don't know, 10 deals that way, right? But if you want to do 100 deals, you got to be more structured, right? And so people hit this top ceiling of growth and they can't figure out why they can't make more money. And I think a lot of it is due to that.
Where do deals actually slow down or die in the process? Is it pipeline management? Is it underwriting, follow up, marketing, client communication, internal ops?
Yes, yes. No, I mean, they can fall apart anywhere, right? I mean, but depending where you're strong, where you're weak, right? A lot of people partner with others that maybe are stronger on certain parts of the deal cycle that they're not as strong on. I think that's an excellent idea. But I mean, it could be anywhere, right? Again, working, we have about 40 brokers right now, and working with them all, we see different breakdowns in different places, right? And some people are really, really good at picking up the phones and getting prospects and getting people interested, but they don't have that next step to get a listing and maybe to close them and actually agree to, get them to want to work with you, right? Some people are good at getting listings, but they're just not good at getting them sold. Maybe they're really bad at pricing them and they're giving bad advice, and the market's not responding well, right? Or bad communication is a big one too. I've learned those lessons early, that over communicate. Clients want to know what's going on. And with human nature, if they don't hear from you, they assume you're doing nothing. And you could be working your ass off for them and making calls and this and that and pounding the pavement. But if they don't know that, they think that you're sitting on your ass. And so I tell my agents all the time, like, telling your client there's no update is an update, and so just I do that all the time. And with my systems, I have, my CRM, and I have like recurring invite, or not recurring tasks, to call my clients every, week or 2 weeks, or depending on the deal. And so, hey, just let everything's going good. Like, we got a lead or two this last week, no buyers yet, but this guy might write an offer. It could be a 30-second conversation, right? Where frankly, I'm saying next to nothing, but the fact that they're hearing from me and they know I'm thinking of them, it means all the difference. Because when it gets tougher, right, and you maybe get an offer and it's too low, in their eyes, but you think that's where the market's at and they should accept it or whatever, right? Like, your credibility is now going to be judged based on what's happened in the past. And if they don't trust you and believe you and have confidence in you that you know what you're doing, they're a lot less likely to take, your advice, right? Or you need a listing extension, right? I mean, they're going to give it to you or not give it to you based on how they feel about the work you're doing. And so all of those things are planting the seeds to just, maintain that good relationship and get the client to know that you're the right person for the job. When you do come to them with, hey, this is the direction that we want to go, they're okay, Matt, whatever you say, because they believe in what you're doing, and they believe in where you're leading them. And so those little degrees, right? Like, you could put 10 brokers in front with the same offer and the same price, right? And like, some of them are going to get that offer accepted and they're going to get a commission. Some of them are going to have the seller not buy in and the listing canceled. They couldn't sell it. They wasted their time. They wasted their money. They now have a bad reputation and they made no money, right? All just because of whether or not that seller wanted to go with your advice, right? So um, I try to preach those little things.
Love it. What are two or three workflows that eat the most time every week?
Well, emails for one are just a huge time suck. Emails are a huge part of business, and brokerage is no different. I've worked really hard to try to tackle that as best as I absolutely can. I keep my inbox paused pretty much all day, every day. I don't have any notifications on, no dings, no any of that ever. The way that I look at email is I call it, proactive versus reactive as far as being a good broker. And the ones that are good and make the money are the proactive brokers. They structure their day to do the things that they know they need to do to make money. The reactive brokers are the ones that run around busy as hell, but don't make any money and can't figure out why. And that's because they're reacting to everyone else's wishes all day. And so, as that relates to email, in my opinion, email is 100% a reactionary event, because if you think about it, every single email you'll ever get in your life, work or personal or whatever, is someone else sending you something and wanting something from you, right? Either they're trying to sell you something, it's an ad or an email blast, or hey, can you sign this? Or hey, what's the price of this? Whatever, right? It's someone wanting something from you. So email is responding to everyone else's wishes, right? Are almost certainly not going to be aligned with what's in your best interest for your own success of your career, right? Not saying just ignore email, right? But you need to understand that. And so, um, I only check email in short batches and I keep it paused all day. And then it unpauses and all of my emails flow in at once. And then I just bang, 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 rapid fire. I use keyboard shortcuts and stuff. And I go through very, very quickly, you know, and I go through, I might have, I unpause it at lunch is the first time I do it. And I might have, 150 emails from the first half of the day. And I'll get through those in about 10 to 15 minutes, and I will reply. I use voice dictation to reply because it's faster. Even though I can type fast, it's just way better to use voice dictation. Shortcuts to delete. I file everything and it pauses itself again. And then I go back to working in the afternoon. And then one more time at the very end of the day, I check it again and that's it. And, a lot of people panic over that because, like, well, Matt, like, are people think you're not responsive or, and it's like, guys, it's like I'm actually the complete opposite because my inbox gets to zero twice a day. And so everyone gets, a maximum of basically a half a day response time from me. If you think about that and like how any of us, work in any industry, you're probably not getting half a day responses from everyone that you're emailing, right? And so I'm actually, I would say, one of the most responsive people that most people would probably consider they've worked with. And I pride myself on that. And so, and again, it compresses email to a very small part of my day because when you get the dings and you check it all day, it's a distraction, right? And if you're deep into work or whatever, every time you get that, you go and, oh, what's the email, right? And it takes you time. There's all these studies and stuff. It takes you a lot of time to refocus on what you were doing. So you're getting nothing done. So anyway, so email is one. That's a huge one for me. And then I would just say general calling and follow up and stuff. It's so important to what we do, but I don't think it's done very efficiently. We have AI dialers now that, will pull lists for us and, we can call very quickly and auto drop custom voicemails, and so they're very unique, they're very catered, and they're done automatically, and it links to our CRM as well. And I have a very kind of methodical follow-up system where I go through all my tasks, make all my calls, I log all my call notes so that the AI will now go behind us and it will automatically set follow-up calls. So like if I called you and said, hey, the call went great, you've got a property, like, hey, he's not ready to sell yet, but he said to call him in a month, right? And I'll say, call in 1 month, and I'll dictate all that and close out the task, and AI will go and read that and it will set a follow-up call to you in 1 month. So I don't have to, I don't have to remember to call you, and I'm going to do exactly what I said because you told me to call you in a month. I'm going to call you exactly 1 month from now. And I do that with 1,000 different little things, right? And so that's how I manage it because I'm never going into the office and be like, oh, what do I need to do today? Who do I need to call? What was that project I was working on? It's just like, Matt, here's your workflow for the day, and then I just execute. And so I think that's a huge one too. That like back to the email, just being responsive and doing what I say I'm going to do is a big deal, right? If I say I'm going to call you in 2 days or 1 week or two or whatever, like, be damn sure that I'm going to do exactly that, and I think that's really built credibility over time with people too, because it's so rare in today's world, I feel to do that, just to do what you say, right?
I think you are the most responsive I've ever probably talked to, Matt.
I really try to be. It's just really important to me to kind of the old school, just like do what you say you're gonna do, be a man of your word, just kind of how I was raised. And I feel like it's rarer and rarer these days. And it's really important for me to kind of stand out in that way, kind of a breath of fresh air, I guess, in modern society, if you will.
Matt, where do brokers get stuck doing admin work that doesn't move revenue?
Yeah, I mean, that's very common too, right? Back to just everything I'm saying and the working on your business and in your business, right? It's the same thing. And so that's a huge thing for me too. And to take your business to the next level, one of the first things we do with our agents when they join us is they fill out we have an Excel spreadsheet, a basic formula of what your time is worth per hour. And you figure out what you want to make. Like, I want to close X amount in commissions, and this is the hours a day I'm going to work, and these are the vacation days. And you just put all these things in, and it'll spit out a number that, based on what you want to do, this is what your time is worth per hour. And it's really important because even like a new broker, like, 21 years old out of college or something that, doesn't, not necessarily expecting to make $1 million today, right? I mean, they have much higher time per hour than they probably realize. It's usually like a minimum of probably like $250 an hour for like an entry level broker. And so after we do that exercise, there's a little box that says, your time is worth X. And I always tell them to print that out and tape it to their computer monitor so that they see it every day. And if you're not, if you're doing those things that are not worth that, then by default, you're not doing those high earning tasks. And so that right there is really the crux of my mindset, my philosophy, all the efficiency talk, all the email management, the task management, all of that stuff is meant to compress the time frame of all that stuff that it has to be done. But why wouldn't you want to do it in as little time as possible to go do higher end stuff? The negotiating deals and pitching listings and networking and building your database, your pipeline, the things that directly truly drive revenue that, like, you can't really outsource per se, or they're not as easy to, right? Like, and so that is brokerage to me, is how do you get more and more of that high dollar time each day and minimize the other stuff. And so we're really good at that. I feel I'd like to think so. And I've talked to a lot of people that have, either been, they've been brokerage coaches or they've run brokerages elsewhere. They've just been a broker a long time. And people tend to be very impressed by the systems we have and stuff, that it's typically better than anything they've seen anywhere else. Not to toot my own horn, but like, it's typically better than anything they've ever seen. And so we really take pride in that because it's all about your time per hour. So the staff, the marketing, all the marketing creation, the OMs, the social media, the email blasts. We have all that stuff done for you within internal, operations team, our marketing team. We help you with your CRM, with your databases, anything we can to get that off your plate so you can go do that stuff. So that's really, like, in our DNA, frankly. It's not just like a to do, a business to do. It's really like who we are.
System sounds amazing, Matt. Let's talk about AI CRE Partners. What was the real reason you co founded AI CRE Partners? What was the problem that you were done tolerating?
Yeah, sure. So pronounced Acre Partners, and it's about a year old now, and it it just kind of came together organically, to be honest. And I I ended up partnering with someone, a good friend of mine that's been in the industry a long time as well, and it just kind of happened, right? And just kind of talking, and hey, kind of thinking about this, thinking about that, and like, hey, let's start something, just very naturally. And as it evolved, and there's all the AI talk and all that, and I really, commercial real estate has always historically been behind, when it comes to tech. We're not exactly known for being cutting edge, and even like against residential, like, we're always light years behind. And so it's the very, like, good old boys club, a lot of, dinosaurs, frankly, that are just slow to change. And we just felt that there was real opportunity for, kind of disturbance and upset. And we thought that AI was going to move probably much faster than most people realize, and was going to sneak up on a lot of our industry, because, as you well know, right, you take 6 months off of keeping up with AI and you're like an eternity behind, right? I mean, it just moves so fast. And so a lot of these people, again, how busy they are and just chasing deals, like, a year is going to go by and they're going to be like, oh my God, I don't even know where to begin. It's so overwhelming. Right. And so we just thought there was huge opportunity here, and we want to be a really competent mid-sized company, not to where we're so small that, we don't frankly have the budget or the manpower to really lean into AI, because it's obviously an effort, right? It's work, it's money, it's time. But we're also not, one of the, public, we're not CBRE or JLL or something with billions and billions of dollars to throw at it, right? But we're kind of, the David versus Goliath mentality, that we can just kind of like be more nimble than them. We're quicker to move. We don't have layers of, red tape and managers and decision makers, and we don't have, stockholders and all that. And, we're quick, we're to the point. It makes sense, we do it. It doesn't make sense, we don't do it. There's not these committees and subcommittees and committee. And so with the speed that AI is moving, frankly, they have way more money than us. But if you can't make a decision to deploy it, we feel like we can compete there, a lot better just on sheer speed alone. And again, as like, not everything within the AI space, it's not crazy expensive to make huge impacts. There's so much, affordable. I mean, what you can get for a $20 a month subscription is like insane on certain platforms, right? I mean, just go back 5 years and be like, hey, $20 a month, you can do XYZ, like you're full shit. There's no way, right? I mean, so you don't have to spend millions of dollars to make an impact with AI. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do.
So explain a little bit to our audience who has never heard of Acre Partners. What problems are you solving and who are you helping?
Yeah, sure. So we are, with Acre Partners as it relates to the AI and the technology, you know, not necessarily an official technical term per se, but I kind of look at it in two main buckets, which is kind of inward facing and outward facing, is what I call it. And inward facing is, our structure, our operations, efficiencies, helping our team, right, do more with less, kind of what I've said a lot of today, to manage our tasks, to manage our leads, our follow-ups, you know, to help maybe build marketing materials, the things that save them direct time and or money, and allow them to, free up time to do higher impact tasks, right? So, the goal, you come here, you work here opposed to somewhere else, and you're going to be able to do more in less time. You're going to be able to close more deals. You're going to be able to make more money because the supporting cast around you allows that, right? So that's kind of the inward facing. The outward facing is more external, to the market and to our clients and so on, right? And using AI to maybe scour markets and look through property data to maybe find better buying opportunities that you couldn't easily do without AI, to analyze deals, maybe do underwriting, do great repeat tasks at scale that are hugely time consuming for a human to do, but they're so repeatable that AI can do them extremely well, right? So a competitive advantage in the market, helping us to find deals, buy deals, and that side of it. So that's kind of the two. The inward is just helping us to be more effective as a company and a team. And then outward is the market, the real estate itself, analyzing, evaluating, purchasing, finding, etc.
When you say agent empowered brokerage platform, what does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah, I mean, agent empowered. We're just we're trying to give them every tool possible to succeed. I mean, I kind of obsess over it. It's fun for me. It's how I'm wired. I'm always trying to find a better mousetrap, a new way to do things, a unique way to think about things and solve problems. And again, we just try to give them all the tools, from tech to the training to our knowledge. Our partners in the company have over 50 years experience. We've done a whole heck of a lot of deals, so we still have the human element, right? It's not like we're some robotic company, right? We're very much human, and we just try to use technology better than our competitors, right? I wouldn't say we're a tech company, right? We're not a tech company, in my opinion. We're just trying to utilize technology better than others, and we're still a human company. And you just are empowered here with the best of what this industry can possibly provide you. And other people are kind of like known for this or known for that, and we just kind of try to really be known for a broader scope, and and try to be on trend for where the industry is going, not necessarily where it's been, I think is key to that.
Everyone says they're using AI, right, Matt? But few are actually using AI. Where is AI actually creating leverage and brokerage today in your world?
Yeah, sure. I mean, AI is probably a buzzword as big of anything, right? I mean, people use it for damn near everything, and it's some people maybe understand, some don't. It means a lot of things. So I mean, but yeah, we're using it, the biggest points of impact first, right? I mean, like I said a minute, inward versus outward, right? We're looking at both buckets and we're seeing where, we're kind of prioritizing based on the biggest impact to either, our time or money or both, and it needs to be, you know, repeatable, right? Because it could be very expensive and time consuming, but if it's all extremely one-off stuff, then AI is just not going to be able to handle it as well, and may or may not be at a point today that it can do much of good at all, right? So I think a big thing on a lot of it is it also needs to be repeatable for a lot of the things that we're doing. Like I said, we're investing into our CRM heavily, and we have it built in there where you can talk to it in kind of like a chat GPT format, and you can like query things like just say, hey, CRM, give me all the office buildings in San Francisco under, 100,000 square feet or whatever. And it'll go search our database and give you that. Or give me the sales comps for every multifamily property, 12 to 20 units in Houston in the last 6 months. And it'll just give us that. So you just talk to it kind of naturally. It'll upload lists. Uploading lists is a huge pain because there's so many different segments of data that you need to match with like an Excel spreadsheet to the CRM. It takes our staff who's done it, the same person for years. It takes them hours to line these data points up and successfully upload a list. It's very much more cumbersome than you might imagine. And now we do that with AI, where we just drop the Excel list and say, here, put it in our CRM, and it automatically knows what to match with what. And it's just an insane time saving, So we're working on automating our offering memorandums, and doing that automatically. That's been a big pain point in brokerage for many years, is the turnaround. Sometimes you either have to spend a whole heck of a lot of time trying to build something yourself in PowerPoint or Canva or whatever. And if you're a broker, you're most likely not a graphic design expert. It's a huge waste of your time. Or you have a marketing team with your company and you have to give it to them, and then they take who knows how long to turn it back. Could be days, it could be week or two, and then the revisions, and you got to give them more edits, and then another week, and so with us now, you take all the points, right? It kind of walks you through the steps. You have the data, you have, the photos, you have the financials, you have whatever you need. You drop it in, it links to our CRM. So it knows it knows who the person is. It knows the address. It knows the square footage, the year built, all that like basic stuff. So you don't have to like have redundant data entry, and it'll go online and it'll go pull like demographics for the city. It'll maybe do like a write up on the area, like whatever you need. And then it'll spit it out, almost simultaneously. Right. So that's a great example of, both OMs are, a huge part of what we do. They're all on and on and on, and, very repeatable. And so we're able to save massive amounts of time and money with that. Those are a couple real life examples. We're doing more. I think documents are one too that's next on my list. Transactional documents from LOIs to listing agreements and purchase agreements. Depending on what you're doing, but a lot of them are very repeatable and they're not rocket science. And so you should be able to get 90% of the way done immediately, right? I mean, you should be able to take maybe a signed LOI and link it to the property in your CRM, and it knows the price and the terms, and it knows who the owner is and who's the signer, and on, and it autofills, the form, and then, sends it to your client for DocuSign, and et cetera. So like that's not done right now, but that's kind of around the corner that, again, I see a very repetitive, time consuming thing that could very much be automated, to a high degree.
That's amazing. That brings me to my next question. What are you most excited about building with AI inside of your company over the next 12 months?
The transactions are the one I just mentioned. The forms are a big one, but I think looking more on the outward side. We've done a lot of inward stuff right now. I think being able to help scour property, markets as a buyer primarily to look for opportunity, to look for those inefficiencies in the market where we can add value that, again, once you kind of get something like that set up, you can look at a very large amount of properties and get extremely dialed in on what you're looking for and find those opportunities and, even, get to the point where, you go query a list based on whatever your criteria is and you immediately get 1,000 properties and, you press one button and, maybe AI voice calls all these people and, sees if they want to sell, or maybe you drop a letter in the mail or shoot them an automated text or, and like just massive outreach and massive lead generation, I think is something, that I want to really explore more that could be a game changer.
That would be huge. Where's AI still weak, Matt, or dangerous in brokerage and advisory work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still, it's come a long way, but I think it's still, needs some work. Sometimes, the hallucinations and stuff can be concerning, right? And we're dealing with very expensive, multi-million dollar properties and, legal contracts and things like that. And so the risk of error, is massive and can be, could be a lawsuit, you could lose your real estate license. There's some real risks that, you can't just kick your feet up on the desk and let AI do your job for you, at this point, because they're not coming after AI's license, right? They're coming after yours. They're not suing AI, they're suing you, And so I think that from the accuracy perspective of a lot of this, we're not quite there. I think it's pretty darn good, but I don't think it's 100% yet. And so I think that is somewhat concerning. You still, if you go too far with AI and you've completely removed the human element, I think that you're asking for a disaster right now. I think that you should always, get your eyes or someone's eyes on it, at least right now. And so I think that's a big one, and just being more, moldable, I guess, maybe like I mentioned a lot about the repeatable tasks, right? And the reason AI works well is because it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I would love to see it just get better and better, and I know it already is, but just, maybe not quite there for me, but just like thinking on its own and like, understanding what I need before I even ask for it, and being more proactive and more of like a human level engagement instead of just being really good at doing what I tell it, and being like, well, Matt, you asked for A and B, so I knew C was coming. Here you go, kind of thing. I think that would be really cool. And, it seems like, again, I've, read a lot on that and, it's coming and it's here in some regards, but, probably early on, right. To where back to what I just said, I, got to be able to trust it and rely upon it. Right. So,
That sounds like the future. I had a previous guest that talked about AI being an employee. Literally, like you could just have a conversation like you and I are having right now, and it will literally do everything or be able to consult you or be able to do everything just like an employee would. That would be pretty amazing. I think that's the future.
yeah, I mean, I agree, and I just read an article myself, Sam Altman, I believe, the OpenAI founder, and he said that his replacement when he steps down as CEO is going to be AI. Basically,
Crazy.
he said that, and he was, serious that his replacement will be, AI. It will be, a robot essentially. It will not be a human to run that company when he's done. Um, you know,
Wow.
so
That's wild.
billion, multi-billion dollar company with, artificial intelligence at the helm. So obviously he's a big AI guy. So he, probably loves to say buzzworthy things like that, and but at the same time, I mean, might be closer than we all realize.
You're not just running a tech experiment, you're scaling people, Matt. As you scale a brokerage to 50 plus brokers and multiple locations, what breaks first? Culture, onboarding, standards, accountability, lead flow?
Yeah, I mean, I think culture is critical. I think a lot of that other stuff is not that hard to solve for, frankly. Those are just like business problems, on onboarding and I mean checklists and things like that, right? That doesn't give me a whole lot of heartburn, and you can always add staff and things like that, right? And but the culture part, right? And we have a secret sauce here, that we feel and we're trying to do something unique. We're brokerages everywhere, right? We have a lot of people in our space. We're not uncommon being a brokerage company, right? But we try to be different and have a secret sauce to us. And without our people, there is no secret sauce, right? And we can have the fancy name and we can have this tool and that tool, but without people that understand who we are in our DNA, and we have people on the phones all day that are representing our company, right? And if they don't understand who we are and what we convey, and that starts to the game of telephone, right? And the farther down the line you get, the more kind of messed up and convoluted the message gets. And so that's kind of culture to me. And so if you don't keep that tight, and you've got 100 different people saying 100 different things about who Acre is on the phone, right? I mean, then we're in trouble. And if you've got an office here and an office in this state and that state, and the manager is disconnected, and they're running it a certain way here and they're running it a certain way there, and that's where you can self implode under your own success. And kind of seen that with some competitors and stuff that have grown really fast, and won't name them, but they've kind of gotten really big, and then shrunk rather rapidly under their own success. And I think that the culture, and continuity is a big part of that. I think that probably scares me more than anything. That any business problem, a software tool or things like that, that can always be solved for, I feel. But culture, and getting the right people and the buy-in and the consistency, that's a hell of a lot harder, especially as you grow.
How do you do it, Matt? How do you build that culture? How do you maintain that culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, well, you need to be intentional, right? You need to be intentional about it. You need to be consistent. You need to have the right messaging and the same consistent messaging, and you need to have everyone convey that message, right? And back, that still ties in, I think, to the systems and stuff, and like even like to onboarding or something like that, how people are onboarded, and what they see and what they're told and who does it, to set that tone from day one, I think is critical. And then if they're go and they grab a cubicle and they sit next to XYZ person, is that person on board with those same ideals, or have they kind of drifted, right? And so I think it's just a constant messaging. I think that you need to continually maintain the human element. Like I said earlier, really, I care for our people. I really enjoy working with them, teaching them, training them. And I think they feel that, and, we do a lot of, we do fun stuff, right? I think you need to get out of the office too. I think that's important for culture. We might go do bowling or wine tasting, or, go to a baseball game, or, just kind of let your hair down kind of stuff, have a few beers, and like, just that kind of stuff I think is really critical. And a lot of people have conversations and build connections within the company that they just wouldn't normally do, or wouldn't be in the same room, or wouldn't have time for, or whatever. And so I think that as many of those connections you can build between different people, kind of like a spider web kind of effect, just the stronger you are. Instead of like a linear kind of connection, and people are much farther away from each other. So bringing people together, and common messaging.
Amazing. What's one operating cadence that you introduced that has made a big difference?
Operating cadence. Let's see. I think, I don't know if this is a cadence per se, but I mean, I would say that our CRM has been really instrumental as to our operations. And you know, we didn't used to have a company CRM. Some people would use it, some wouldn't. Some people would have their own. Some would be here, and we streamlined it, and we kind of mandated it really for everyone. And now using the same method of communication, having all the same contacts, just the same setup, it's just been really big for us. And again, I think that also even ties into culture too, and it really is our central hub of how we do things. And I think that made a big deal for the culture and the cohesiveness, and getting everyone on the same page, sort of thing. Because you know it is a critical piece of technology to what any brokerage does. And starting there with being fragmented is, you're kind of asking for trouble, I feel.
Amazing, Matt. I want to pull on the investor thread a little bit. So a lot of brokers want to stop transaction or transacting on other people's deals and start owning. You got development and investments in the mix. When
Yes.
did you decide you wanted to be on the ownership side?
I decided that many years ago, and within the last couple years have just acted on it much, much more forcefully, I guess you could say. I probably decided, 9 or 10 years ago that I wanted to do much more on the investing side, and that's why I went back. We mentioned earlier, got my master's degree in real estate. I graduated in 2019, and I went back for the investing side. Then, you really don't need a master's degree to be a broker. It was kind of overkill, but I did it in anticipation of my future, and here I am. And so I wanted to do it then, and I've gotten some good mentors over the last 3 or 4 years, and done some good coaching and consulting with people, and like kind of really talked to a lot of people that have been there, done that, right? That were brokers, and they fully transitioned to the investment side. And so I've kind of gotten deeper and deeper into what that looks like over the last few years. And that's a huge part of what we do. And I'm working on this development that you mentioned. I've been working on that for 3 years now. It's a public market development that's a substantial ground up development that will be big. And when it's done, it'll be a great project. And then at Acre, our name, right? Probably should have started with this, but our name, AICRE, is how it's spelled. It has twofold meaning. And one is the artificial intelligence commercial real estate, but the other is asset investing commercial real estate. And those are the two pillars of our company. So we've talked a whole heck of a lot of AI and brokerage and stuff here today, but the investing side of it is just as equal to, it's the other 50% of our company. And so me and my partners, we believe that brokerage is, one of, if not the best way to learn commercial real estate. It's a great way. You can get in young, very little risk, right? You're really only risking your time for the most part. You're not risking a bunch of money. You're watching other people throw millions of dollars around at these deals, and you're watching them go well, them not go well, right? You're talking to super smart people, you're talking to frankly not so smart people, and you're getting a really good crash course on what commercial real estate is, and somewhat of a spectator role, right? Like I said, you're guiding and advising other people's transactions, and you're really risking your time, right? And so you get to see a lot of what works and what doesn't. Just get to build your basic foundational knowledge. But in my opinion, one of the gravest tragedies of our industry is those that stop there basically, and they do that for 20, 30, 40 years. They make maybe a decent career out of it. They make a lot of money, and they, retire, right? And but brokerage is very much an active sport, and when you stop, your income stops, right? There's not really typically residual income, in brokerage. And so the passive ownership side, or the investment side, is the side that makes the money when you're done, right? And so that's where I feel people mess up a lot, in my opinion, is they just do this for 30 years, and they don't have enough real estate, or don't have any real estate, right? I mean, so we're trying to get, back to the culture. We're trying to get people that feel that way and believe in that, and make that a very active part of our DNA, that yes, we're brokers, and we're working hard on, behalf of our clients, and, doing everything we can there, but we're also looking out for other opportunities. And, we want to invest, and we have the knowledge and the skill sets to do so. And, build your own portfolio, build something that you can be proud of. So we have really, unique and special programs with our agents where, they bring us in deals, they represent us, right? Basic stuff, get the commission, but also different unique incentives and stuff to get additional equity, right? And maybe
Amazing.
bonuses on money, or, they can bring in additional, funds on the sideline if they want, just to start to do that. And those that know, about commercial real estate, and just even basics of, compounding interest and things like that. Like these kids coming out of college and stuff, if they start doing this in, 21, 22 years old, I mean, and you throw, small amounts, you put, say, 25 grand a year or something, you store away and put into these, properties, and own 1% of a building or something, by the time you're 35, 40 years old, I mean, you are going to be in, the top 0.1% of, financial people in your, age bracket, right? And you can retire, right? I mean, you can retire. And so we have programs around that. We have kind of a 10-year roadmap that we lay out for people that says, hey, like if you come here, this is how we do things. And if you do this, this, and this in like 10 years, like this is where you're going to be. And we spell out the whole thing. It's like, here's your blueprint. here's the road. All you've got to do is walk the path and do the work. And this is where you're going to end up, So it really helps people to visualize and, it's not just smoke and mirrors, kind of thing.
I love the passive investor platform that you have or the angle that you're taking. That's awesome, man. That's great for these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That and the AI, it's very unique and it's resonating extremely well with those that we're speaking to about it.
What's the one thing you underestimated about development the first time that you went deep into it?
The time, the time. I'm in California. It is a burdensome process like you would not believe. And I feel like people not even in real estate know that on like the premise, on like the surface. But unless you live it and breathe it and you really see the nuts and the bolts and the day to day, it's hard to put into words. It's truly incredible. And I've been working on my project for 3 years, over 3 years, and I don't even have approvals yet. I haven't even had a public hearing.
Wow.
And actually, just today, coincidentally enough, that we're having this podcast, I spoke to the city again. I was waiting. There was a deadline for them to provide me feedback on some stuff. And they just threw some more crap at me and basically just delayed me another 6 months. So
Wow.
it's a
The
very
time.
it's a very frustrating, very time consuming, doesn't have to be that way. I mean, and this is on I'm not trying to do a very, frowned upon, not trying to build like a toxic, sludge facility or, something that like everyone hates. Like this is a very, very exciting and promising project that I have huge support in the community. I mean, from the citizens to the mayor to everyone else, they really, really like it. And the government process just cannot get out of the way. And so I just am like, man, I could only imagine if they didn't want my project, because they're legitimately helping me in every way that they can. And I'm still like, you know, no idea when this thing's going to be done. So it takes deep pockets. It takes a lot of patience and so much technical knowledge to navigate a lot of these hurdles. It feels never ending sometimes. You gotta really be even keeled. It's very demoralizing sometimes, frankly, with how many landmines and roadblocks get put up in your path. So the time for sure. Time for sure.
Now, let's talk a little bit about that project. For our audience that doesn't know, it's a Brentwood project.
Yes.
Give us a high level overview. What is it? What stage? And what's
Yeah.
the real complexity behind the scenes?
Yeah, sure. So it's in Brentwood, California, which is actually my hometown. So I'm born and raised there, fourth generation actually. So I know the area very well. I'm also a very active broker in that community. So I know the people, I know the real estate, I'm very comfortable with that market. And yeah, what I'm building is a public market and it's, our downtown. We're in the Bay Area, we're in the East Bay, kind of on the fringe of the Bay Area. So, 45 minutes, to an hour plus to like San Francisco. And so we're kind of out in the suburbs and it's very nice, good school districts, good place to raise kids, a lot cheaper housing than deep in the Bay Area. And so we've had really major explosions of like people and population through like COVID and stuff because we're near Silicon Valley, we're near San Francisco, and the commute is a nightmare to get to those places. But all of these people don't have to commute anymore. They're all working from home. And so you've got, I mean, again, we're right next to Silicon Valley. So you've got, the Googles and the Apple and the Facebook and all of these companies with these huge high paying tech workers that making $500,000-600,000 a year or more, and now they're in their pajamas every day, right? And so they don't have to live in the super dense crowded expensive area where a one bedroom starter house is 1.5 million. They can come out here and get 3,000 square feet and a yard for 800 grand or whatever, right? Which is pretty unheard of for the most of the Bay Area. So we got a huge influx of population and higher end income, higher end demographics and spending and palette and everything. And so it's really elevated lately and we don't have enough attraction to serve the community now, the larger community, but also just the elevated community. There's not enough nicer restaurants. There's not enough family friendly activities. There's just not enough to do. You asked a lot of people, we're probably considered like a boring farm town. We're very well known for agriculture, very, very well known actually, and our produce gets served in, Michelin star restaurants in New York City, which is completely across the country, right? But there's nothing better than Brentwood produce, and so we're really well known for stuff like that. But again, there's not a lot to do. And so there's our downtown, this project is right in downtown. Our downtown is busting at the seams. There's 0% vacancy. There's not a single space available in our downtown area. And there are tons and tons of businesses that want to be there and they can't. There's nowhere for them to go. And so this will provide dozens of new tenant spaces, and it's smaller, like stall concept, so you might be looking at, 100 to 500 square feet for a lot of these spaces, but it's part of a bigger building and part of a bigger ecosystem. So there's a lot of synergy there and they thrive off of each other. So it's really a community hub, of food, of drink, of, family time, hanging out. It has an outdoor area with like a performance venue and playground and fire pits, TV. So it's come have a beer, come have lunch, come on Saturday, eat, drink, have dinner. There will also be some anchor, like full, traditional restaurants that, I envision being like very high end, fine dining kind of thing. And so it'll really be a significant community focal piece when it's done. So great project, just the time. Time kills me.
What is what's killing it?
Probably shouldn't go into too much detail, but just the government process. There's always one more thing. There's always one more, report you need to do. There's always one more, fine or fee to pay. There's always one more entity that needs to review and approve this, that, and then, you got to get a consultant for that because it's so special, and it's just, it's just so technical. Environmental in California, right, with like CEQA and stuff we have to deal with is crazy. My piece, it's a 4-acre site in total, but it actually consists of two parcels. One is privately owned, one is publicly owned. And so the public piece owned by the city took a really substantial amount of time to get into escrow because there's just all this California legislation to sell to me. It was a very red tape process, if you will. So again, even though the city loves it and they want to do everything they can to help me, they're still bound by California, right? And all of the California state laws. And so trying to navigate all that is, small little Brentwood, right? It just took time and just extended it. So it's just been a little bit of a lot of things.
Amazing. You post that the market feels like it's starting in 2026 at a ferocious pace. What are you seeing on the ground right now that makes you say that?
Yeah, we've just been very busy. We've been growing a lot, we've been hiring a lot, and our brokers are noticeably more productive than they have been, myself, but also just everyone, right? And having insight into our whole team and, back to our CRM and everyone's data in there and stuff. And so we see the pipelines for everyone, and we can compare them to prior time periods. We see the new listings, we see the pending. It's just and even just like anecdotally, right? Just like the phone rings a lot more. Just people, a lot of conversations last year about wait and see and not ready and interest rates. And now all the phone calls are like, I'm ready, let's do this. It's just a noticeable shift in the market and the mentality. And I think interest rates are a huge part of that. I think the tax bill last summer that was passed is a huge part of that. And people have gone from the wait and see to they finally feel ready. And, declining interest rate environment is great for us, obviously. And I think it's a psychological part more even than the real dollars and interest rate. I think just that people, you talk to people now and oh, interest rates are going down, right? I think just that part of it, that knowing that we seem to be in probably a long-term declining rate environment where for several years we were in a long-term increasing environment, right? And so just that mental switch of knowing that it should just get better and better from interest rates is not likely to ratchet up anytime in the near future. I think it just makes people very bullish and very optimistic to do deals and to deploy capital and make decisions, which we get paid off of transactions, right? Good market, bad market, doesn't really matter. As long as people are doing deals, we're getting paid, right? The worst market, it was everyone sitting on the sidelines, scared, not knowing what to do and doing no deals, right? And that's what has been a lot of the last couple of years. And brokerage has been tough top to bottom. You look at even the big guys and, they're public. So they release their earnings reports and stuff. And I mean, they got crushed, for a couple years there. I mean, from like a $200 million profit one quarter to like losing $100 million the next quarter, like just like major swings, and there wasn't the deal flow. There just was no transactions being done. So just overall, everyone's way more optimistic, I think.
What's your prediction on how brokers and investors should position themselves in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to give blanket advice on that, right? Because everyone's different and where they're at in their career, if they're early investor, if they've been investing, if they have a portfolio, if they're looking to jump in on the sidelines on the first time, if they're working and they have, income elsewhere, or if they're retired and this is their whole, you know, whole income stream, whether they're paying cash, whether they're financing, whether they're in an office or right. So it's so hard to give advice on a blanket statement because I could have 10 clients in front of me and give them 10 totally different answers, right? But I mean, generally speaking, the market as a whole, again, speaking very like high level, very, just kind of generic, if you will, the market overall seems to be in a pretty good place. It seems to be stable, not really skyrocketing in many sectors, not really plummeting in many sectors. Pretty kind of ho hum, I think, right now. Offices come back around in a lot of respects in a lot of places. It was brutal for several years there. I'm near San Francisco, right? And that market is rebounding pretty nicely right now, which is hugely driven by AI. Silicon Valley and AI. I mean, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, I mean, in regards to AI are just like dominating the world. I just saw that, just recently that 54% of the investments into AI are right here in the entire world. 54% of all money going into AI is right here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. So they raised $184 billion last year in AI companies just in San Francisco. So, and there's been like, the offices got just totally vacated, right? Because we're, very, very liberal policies and COVID and everything got shut down. No one was going in and it turned into a ghost town, right? And so that's come back with a vengeance with AI. And there's like something like 400 something AI leases that have been signed in the last like 2 years. And so they're signing leases like crazy. They're taking up office space, which doesn't just help the office, right? It helps the apartment complexes, right? They're going to live there. They're going to, get the rents up. It helps the sandwich shop on the corner come lunchtime, right? When everyone, needs it, needs to eat. It helps everything top to bottom in that city. And so, they got hit pretty hard. And so, I think they're rebounding. So again, it's such specific advice, but overall, I think the market's in a good place, and depending on whether you're looking to buy or sell, there's probably some good opportunities out there for you, but it's so dependent.
Amazing. Let's land this plane, Matt. So we'll do a little rapid fire.
Okay.
Quick hits. Best deal you ever did and why?
Best deal. So yeah, I worked on one that was a land deal. Long story short, got appraised. The seller wanted appraisal, appraised for 7 million bucks. We were able to find some obscure kind of California law that wasn't really known at that time that basically allowed the zoning to be very different than what it was, which greatly changed the value. And, we were looking at a $7 million property in a very long time frame. Development kind of escrow could be, 12, 18 months or more kind of before closing. We were getting offers from 9 to $15 million and we closed in like 90 days. And made the seller millions more than what they thought they were going to make, what even the appraiser said the building or the land was worth. And just just kind of satisfying, like to be able to do that kind of, deal. And so many other adjectives I could apply to different deals, but we'll go with satisfying, and we'll go with that one.
Amazing. Worst deal lesson and what did it teach you?
Um I'll go a little different. This is, I could probably talk about too many of these, but I'll go a little
Yeah,
different on this one. And this ties into kind of what I said about who I am and my unique path at this point. And way back in the early stages of my career, long story short, was talking to my grandma actually, and she was talking about a friend. This was when I was in residential. Her friend had a condo that she was selling, and it asked her for a broker. And my grandma gave her the name of like some friend of hers, and I was like, you know, had no business, right? Like struggling to make a living, like just wasn't going my way. And I was kind of like, what the, BTF,
Yeah,
grandma, right? Like, are you kidding me? How could you, like, I'm doing it right. And so, anyway, so I
me.
was really, yeah,
How about me?
exactly. I was like, I was pissed. I was distraught. I was like angry, right? And she was like, she's like, I didn't realize that that's what you did, and like, I didn't know you could do that. And so, again, I was mad, but when I stepped back, I realized, like, she wouldn't, she's my grandma, right? She wouldn't have hurt me intentionally. She wouldn't. She's not that kind of person, right? And so I'm like, if my own grandma doesn't realize what I do for a living, that's probably a problem. And that means that nobody else probably knows either. And so that's where I really kind of flipped the switch, that I kind of just, in my head, again, I didn't know. I was just a young kid, and just no one told me. It's like, can't just sit back and like expect the phone to ring. Right. So that's kind of maybe that proactive versus reactive, where I went to, like, you know, being a missionary almost, and like, spreading the word of like who I am and what I do. And I told everyone, and I just was very active, and I started doing this and that, and going to networking meetings, and sending email blasts, and posting on social media, or what, like, and I just became very present and top of mind. And, again, it was a good lesson that came out of that, but it was a very bad experience at the time. So,
Sounds like a great lesson. Sounds like something that, we need to learn right through our failures, and it made you who you are today.
yep, for sure.
Awesome. One KPI you track weekly that most brokers ignore.
Oh, what do we track weekly? Well, there's, I guess, different ways to answer this. It could be from like a broker perspective, right? Or more of a management perspective. I would say, retained earnings is really important. A lot of people track just total commissions, or, whatever. The percent that you keep, right? Because, brokerage kind of model is, $100,000 comes in, and, the agent gets a piece, the house gets a piece, right? And whatever the house gets is that kind of retained earnings piece. And that's what you run the company off of, and pay the bills off of, and, hopefully have some profit for your effort, right? And so that can really get eroded over time, and it can sneak up on you. Either your expenses go up, or, as agents get more productive, they oftentimes, want increased splits and so on. So every deal that they close, you're getting smaller and smaller margin. And so there's that constant kind of attrition that you need to manage, because brokers should ideally stay with you and grow over time, but you're probably going to get less and less of their deals over time. So you need to keep kind of filling the bottom of the funnel with the newer, kind of higher company split agents, right? That require more handholding and take more time and energy, but, dollar for dollar can be worth more to you. And if you don't, then your margins just get smaller and smaller and smaller, and, you know your expenses are probably going up as well. And, pretty soon you're kind of upside down or close to it, with a lot of fixed expense that you can't really change easily, right? If, like, you're spending too much money, and you got a bunch of 5-year office leases, like, you can't just get out of that, right? You can't just go next week and, cancel your subscription, right? I mean, so that's where I feel like it'll sneak up on you. And so paying attention to it regular is important.
Amazing. One tool or system you can't live without.
Yeah, I'll go, like, just that I think would be valuable, because I use so many, obviously, right? That I think would maybe be valuable. I'm going to give you two, actually. I'm gonna cheat and answer a different question, but I would say Boomerang is one, which is what I used for my emails. Boomerang for Gmail is what I use to pause my inbox, and I can also you can send emails at scheduled times. So I send myself like an email every morning, like starting my day, certain way, with kind of mentally getting myself in the right way. I send myself one at the end of the day. I use it all the time. Like, they send you a little recap. And I boomeranged. It was like, I think, 36,000 emails last year or something. So I use it nonstop. And you can, like, if you have a meeting, like, say you're meeting a client next Tuesday at 2 o'clock to go over financials or something, right? I'll boomerang, or I'll send that to myself before the meeting on next Tuesday, so that it'll show up in my inbox right when I need it, instead of kind of cluttering and taking up space in the meantime. And so it just keeps the stuff that, I don't need to look at that 150 times between now and Tuesday. It's distracting, it's taking up mental energy. I want it when I want it, right? And I don't want to think about it until then. And so I do that with everything. And so, and, you can do recurring emails anyways. And so So that's one that's just been an absolute game changer for my time and management of emails. Another one is it's called Whisper AI, and it's the voice dictation that I use, and it's a really cool platform. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Just talk to it.
Yeah, I love it. I've used voice dictation for 8, 9 years for my emails, for my call notes and all that kind of stuff. I use it all day, every day. But they're extremely literal in the past where, you have to say like, I went to the bank, period, right? And like put the period in and like stuff like that. And they mishear you a lot. And this one is just it's just so much better because it's just intelligent and it adds the punctuation for you and it corrects names. And even if like you like mess up or like screw up your words or like say a wrong word and then just like start talking with the right word, it like removes the wrong word knowing that it's wrong and like cleans the sentence up for you without you doing anything. And so, I'll write, before I'd write, a big paragraph email or whatever, and I have to go spend, a minute, capitalizing and putting the period so like I don't look like an idiot that doesn't know like grammar, right? And so, but now it does that for me. So it's so huge. It's such a simple tool, but it's one that I use all day, every day, thousands of times over and over. And it's just those seconds and minutes it saves me compounded are just are monumental. And I love it. So
Last one, Matt. One trait that you look for in a broker joining your platform.
there's so many, but I'll just go with the first one that came to my mind. I'm gonna go with competitiveness. I think that, again, 1099, independent contractor, no ceiling, no floor. I want winners. You have to want to win. If you're casual, it's just like, hey, good sport kind of thing. Like, this isn't the industry for you. Like, you have to want to win. You have to want to be the best. I still to this day have the kind of unrealistic expectation that every single listing in my market should be mine, and I want 100% market share because every deal I don't get is like a loss to me, right? And I get like a little piece of me like dies and gets irked inside every time I see someone else have a listing. It's completely unrealistic, right? But it's like you have to want to win all day, every day, and picking up the phone, you got to want to win. In a listing, you want, it's just how you have to be. And if you don't have that hardcore competitive spirit, I don't know how you could ever make it in this industry. So again, there's so many, but that's the first one that came to mind.
I love it. I had
So
a
I
previous
love
guest.
I love like prior athletes, Division 1 athletes or,
That was
sports
it.
people, military, like people with structure and discipline and, that fire, they make great brokers.
That's exactly what my previous guest said. He's CEO of a large company. I think he owns 600 companies. It's unbelievable. It's huge.
Nice.
And he loves hiring athletes,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Any type of sports athlete, whether you're a collegiate athlete, whether you're a high school athlete, because of your mindset and your competitive nature and being able to handle things, just like you were saying, right?
100%.
That's huge, huge, awesome, awesome. Where can people connect with you and follow you? What you're building?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I try to post. I'm not the best poster, admittedly, but you can go to our website, acrepartners.com, which is spelled AICRE, partners.com. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to connect with anybody. You know, if you go to the website, my phone number and email is there. Call, connect. I don't mind connecting with anyone. Questions or anything. And we are actively growing the team as well. If anyone's interested in having a conversation about that, we're actively recruiting nationwide. So, um, if this message resonates, we'd love to chat and any questions. I'm an open book. I love meeting and sharing and there's been so many people that, like I said, have mentored me and helped me in my career that just so grateful for that they they didn't have to, right? They didn't owe me a thing, and they wanted to and they chose and they've made a monumental impact. So I'd like to think I'm at a point where I can give that in return to people. And so, more than willing to do what I can for, anyone interested.
Amazing, Matt. We'll drop all those links in the show notes. Matt, I appreciate operator level breakdown. Brokerage is overdue for transformation, and it's clear you're building it from the inside with real execution. This has been the AI Edge podcast. If this episode made you rethink how brokerage platforms and AI will collide, share it with a broker, owner, or operator who needs to hear it. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and thank you for having me. It was great.